gap in the Pacific Northwest in a variety of ways, but especially for marine wildlife rehabilitation. So do you guys know that the Pacific Northwest is the only region in North America that actually lacks a dedicated marine wildlife hospital? It's pretty surprising, right? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about marine wildlife and marine wildlife conservation today. Briefly, I'll introduce SR3, what we are, and then I'm going to talk about each R of our name. So SR3 stands for Sealife Response, Rehabilitation, and Research. And I'm going to go over what does each R really mean and how do we play into each aspect of that marine conservation. And then at the end, I've got some pictures of some native wildlife, and we're going to talk about the different native marine mammals here. And I've got some really fun things to give away. So let's just take a look here, people. And I know adults like stuffed animals as much as kids, so we've got some fun stuff to give away, so pay attention, and you might be able to win one of these. We've got multiples. I know this table over here in particular wants the stuffed animals. Yeah. All right, so first of all, SR3 was actually formed last fall, and we have, at this point, 5 full-time staff. We're a nonprofit organization. We have 11 board members, and we work very closely with NOAA and a variety of other organizations. While we don't have a permanent home yet officially, we're likely going to be located in, can anyone take a guess where we're going to be home? West Seattle. Woo! Yeah, so likely we're going to be down by Salties on that property that's right next to the water. So that's likely our future home. And then just a little bit about myself. Stu already introduced me. I'm a wildlife veterinarian. So instead of the veterinarian that most of you guys know you bring your dog or cat to, I'm a veterinarian that goes and looks out at marine wildlife. So harbor seals, sea otters, but even sea stars need a marine veterinarian, and whales. So I treat a variety of species that maybe aren't typical for a veterinarian to see. Before I worked here, I actually was the head veterinarian at the Seattle Aquarium. Who here has been to the Seattle Aquarium? Let's see a raise of hands. Awesome. Yeah, pretty nice place, huh? So I really enjoyed my time there. I was there for 6 years and then just left to start this new venture to help save wildlife in the Pacific Northwest. So first of all, what is marine wildlife response? Can anyone out there tell me, what do we do when we respond to a marine wildlife? Okay, yeah, the pink shirt.
You get a team assembled according to what animal you're looking to go and deal with, and then you supply the trucks that you need, and you get everybody out there, and you cordon off the area with yellow tapes and signs.
Great answer. So you get a team assembled. We've got some responders over here. Do you guys, seal sitters, do you want to say what it's like to respond? You're responding all the time. Well, we've got some amazing responders right over here. So Seal Sitters in West Seattle is one of the most active stranding networks in the state. And what they do is they're really the first responders. So when an animal's in need on the beach, you're going to call a hotline and you're going to get connected with these experts who will then go check out the situation. And then if they need help, they might call SR3 because I'm a wildlife veterinarian, and I would then come to the beach and kind of help them out because they realize they might need a veterinarian. So does that sound right, you guys? But you're on the beach a lot because you're really tan. Yeah, I know. They're on the beach a lot. Who has seen the seal sitters on the beach? Yeah, a lot of people, right? So they're really important, and they're the first line of defense for all the marine wildlife in West Seattle. And there's a lot of marine wildlife. So I have a stranding map up here, and this is to highlight seal sitters. They're one of a variety of stranding networks in Washington. So Washington has a lot of coastline. Does anyone here know how many miles of coastline Washington has? Any guesses? In miles. Don't give me metric. Any guesses? Doug? How many miles of coastline does Washington have? 17,000? That's a lot. But we have actually the same amount of coastline as California, which is 3,000 miles. Did you guys know we had the same amount of coastline as California? That's a lot of coastline, right? We're really as cool as California. We're cooler, actually. So other important players here in the Pacific Northwest for stranding response include WDFW, which is our state program, and Cascadia Research. And they respond to a lot of the dolphins and whales that strand here. So you might be wondering, what is SR3 doing right now? Well, we are responding to injured or stranded wildlife in collaboration with the stranding networks. So the stranding networks are the first line of defense, and then if they've got a difficult case that needs a veterinarian, that's when they call us. And we actually have, it's kind of like the Ghost Busters vehicle, but we actually have a used ambulance that we turned into a marine mammal ambulance. So it's pretty fun. Other things that we're doing right now, and I'll talk a little bit about, are we're disentangling sea lions and whales. So did you guys know that sea lions and seals get entangled in garbage? Any guesses? Do you guys have any ideas what they get entangled in?
No, we live in Auburn. So it's a little far.
Anything? Plastic? Yeah, plastic. That's one of the most common things, unfortunately. And I know you guys, can you see the screen up here? See the sea lion? Yeah, so he's actually sleeping. He's not, he's alive, and we just disentangled him. We actually removed some plastic from his neck. So it's a sea lion like this, and he had some trash around his neck, and so we sedated him. We took the trash off, and then we let him go, and he did really, really well. Do you think that that's important, you guys? Yeah, totally important. These sea lions deserve to be trash-free. And this is actually a picture of a large whale with ropes around him. And this is a really challenging thing, but there are people out there who are specially trained to go remove trash from whales. And that's really hard to do because whales weigh a lot. And we're really honored because we've got a specially trained large whale entanglement expert with us today. And he is going to stand up and wave. Doug? Say hi to everyone, Doug. It takes a long time, woo! It takes a long time to be trained to disentangle a whale and a lot of dedication. So we're really lucky to have Doug here. And we also work with Cascadia Research. They have a whale entanglement expert as well. So Washington now has 2 whale entanglement experts. So I'm actually going to quiz you guys. Does anyone know how many whales and cetaceans, dolphins, get entangled every year in the world? Any guesses? We have some guesses on coastline, so Doug can't guess because he knows this number. Anyone? What do you think, Stu? Do you have any guesses? 5,000. So we got a 5,000 guess. Anyone else? Yeah. What do you think? 10,000. Good. Keep going. What do you got? 14,000. So it's actually around 300,000 whales and other dolphins get entangled in nets every year around the world. So it's a huge problem, and we're lucky to have people in Washington that can disentangle these animals. But sadly, more whales die from entanglement than they do whaling. So it's a really big problem. These are just a few other pictures. One of our favorite little patients recently is a Guadalupe fur seal. And Guadalupe fur seals are actually endangered, and they're from a really warm part of the planet, Southern California. So they do come up here for vacation and then sometimes get lost. So we actually transported that animal back down to California earlier this spring. So she's doing well. And now we're going to talk about rehabilitation. Has anyone here ever brought an injured animal to a rehab center? Let's see a show of hands. Injured bunny, injured bird to the rehab center you guys have? What animal did you bring in? Yep. Bunny? What about you? A kitten? Okay. Anybody? Yeah? Bird? Okay. Has anyone ever brought a marine mammal to a rehab center? Well, you have, but in a different part of the country. Probably. Oh, here, maybe, yep. So we rehabilitate birds and raccoons and all these other animals, but it's also important to rehabilitate harbor seals and harbor porpoises, which are like dolphins that live up here. So these are really important animals to rehabilitate. Can anyone tell me why rehabilitation is important? Why is it important to rehab an animal? Any ideas? Why did you guys take that bunny in? Because it got injured? Yeah, so they took the bunny in because it was injured. So that's really important. We want to help those injured animals. Anyone else take an animal in? So another reason we do it is actually to monitor the populations and see what's going on with wildlife. And then we can determine, are they doing well? Are the wildlife populations healthy or not? So those are all really important reasons why we rehabilitate animals. And I already mentioned, but the Pacific Northwest is the only region in North America that doesn't have a rehabilitation center. So SR3's main goal is to create the region's first dedicated marine wildlife rehabilitation center for critters like harbor seals. So I have another quiz question for you guys, but I'm just going to tell you, in the Pacific Northwest, we have around 400 to 600 marine animals strand every year. So that's a lot of critters every year that don't actually have a place to go. So that's why SR3 exists. And so right now we should have some pools open by this October to help animals in need, and those animals in the winter time. So harbor seals strand in the summer. Does anyone know what strands in the winter? Sea otters, yeah. So most of our sea otter strandings actually happen in the winter time, and so we want to make sure that we have the facility open to respond to stranded sea otters. So last year in Washington, 48 sea otters stranded, and this year we've had a lot of sea otter strandings as well. So it's a really important thing for Washington. And then last but not least, I wanted to talk about research. Do any of you want to be scientists? Oh, we're losing our children. Are anybody scientists in the audience? Any scientists? You guys are going to be scientists when you grow up, right? Maybe? No? What do you want to be? A veterinarian? Well, that's a good idea, too. How about you? What do you want to be? Not sure? Doesn't know yet. Well, I encourage you to be a veterinarian. That's a really good idea. That's what I am. So personally, I think it's the best. But yes, the science of wildlife research is really important. Thanks, guys, for coming. And so wildlife research is what we do with the orcas. And this is a really important one because the orcas here are really, really endangered. And this is my last quiz question for the day, but does anyone know how many orcas you get to win this amazing orca stuffed animal? How many of the southern resident killer whales or local orcas are left right now? Dun, 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 dun. 13. No, close. Keep going. No.
350. 74.
Ooh, we're getting warm. We're getting really warm. Getting warmer.
83.
Down, down, down.
81.
Down. The winner is in the hat. 78. All right. That was kind of like an auction in a weird way. But there are 78 killer whales left. And last year, 6 killer whales died in that population. So how many years before they're extinct? Not many, right? Good job on the 78. Are we all going to remember? Can you tell your friends tonight how many endangered killer whales are left in the Pacific Northwest? 78. That's the only thing. I hope you guys remember that, if nothing else from this talk. So we actually study the local killer whales in collaboration with the Center for Whale Research and several other wonderful nonprofits in the area. And the way that we do the study of killer whales is actually through the use of drones. So the drones fly over the killer whales and they take pictures of the killer whales from above, so we can actually measure their body weight and their growth rate and a lot of other really important things. So this is something, this work complements the amazing work that the Center for Whale Research does and UW does. There's a researcher at UW, Sam Wasser, who looks at the fecal matter of the killer whales. Has anyone seen the dogs out there that sniff killer whale poo? It's pretty amazing. So we work in collaboration with these other groups to essentially take the whales to the doctor. So it's really, really important. And then I have some cool photos, but I know you guys can't see them very well. These are some photos of killer whales from above. And these killer whales are actually in Antarctica. So our killer whale biologist studies killer whales around the entire world so we can learn more about killer whales. And killer whales eat different things depending on where they are in the world. So these killer whales are eating something that has some of the same color patterns as they do, but it's much smaller. I bet none of you can see it from where you are, so I'll just tell you. These are called B2 killer whales, and they're actually eating a penguin, believe it or not. Pretty crazy, huh? So our killer whales specialize on Chinook salmon here and other types of fish, but these killer whales eat penguins. It's kind of sad, right? These cute little penguins. Yeah. I know. It's the orcas kind of hunt together, and those penguins don't have much of a chance against a bunch of orcas. Hi, guys. So this is just an image above of a humpback and her calf, and so we can take these cool drone images from above, and we can tell whether the calf is doing well, whether mom is doing well, and this is really important for measuring the health of these whales. So this is also what our researcher, Dr. Holly Fernbach, does around the world. And then we also research really important things like sea star wasting disease. So let me see a show of hands. Who here has ever heard of sea star wasting disease? Nice, there's some people. Awesome. So sea star wasting disease actually started in 2013, and it was first identified here in Washington. It now has spread from Alaska to Mexico. It affects the entire West Coast. And some of the sea star species that used to be very, very common here in Washington are now almost gone and may become endangered soon. So it's a really devastating disease, but we are researching it here at SR3 and trying to figure out what's going on. So now I want to talk a little bit about the marine animals in this part of the world. And this is where we can have more fun and people can win more stuffed animals. And I see some potential recipients of those stuffed animals right here in front. So we've got a couple more here. We do have another killer whale, even though one has been won. So I'm going to talk about pinnipeds, which are seals and sea lions. I'm going to talk about whales and dolphins, which the fancy word is cetaceans. And then I'm also going to talk briefly about sea otters, because everyone loves sea otters, and their cousin, the river otter. So first of all, it's kind of confusing to people. How are these animals even mammals, right? Because they live in the water. It's pretty crazy, but they all are warm-blooded. They all breathe air, even though they live in the water. They all feed their young with milk, which is pretty crazy, right? Because they're in the water, but they do it. And then they also have hair. But where's the hair? You guys ever seen hair on a whale? No, right? They don't have much hair, but they just have a few little follicles of hair. And then when baby dolphins are born, they have little whiskers. It's pretty cute, right? I know. So this is a picture of an animal on your left and an animal on your right. Can you guys tell me which one is a seal and which one is a sea lion? Yeah, do you know? Oh my goodness, that is so right. Way to go, buddy. So that's amazing. I just figured this out like 2 years ago. So the one on the right is a seal. And we know that the big whiskers is a really good way to identify it. And then the big rear flippers is another great way to identify the fact that that's a seal, not a sea lion. So the one on the other side is a sea lion. So pretty fun. Way to go. Where did you learn that? Nice. Yeah. Yeah, the whiskers. Good job. That was amazing. So, how old are you? 8. An 8-year-old knew the difference between a seal and a sea lion. So for all those adults out there who don't know yet, we need to work on you. So I'm going to quiz you later, and if any of those adults can tell me what the difference is between a seal and a sea lion, you will also win a stuffed animal, but you have to know. So the harbor seal is really one of my favorite animals, and it really is the mascot of the Salish Sea, because these guys live here year-round. So they don't go on vacation to California or Alaska. These guys are really hardcore Pacific Northwesterners. They recovered from extensive hunting. So harbor seals were hunted almost to extinction in this area. And they eat pretty much anything. They're a generalist predator. And the whiskers was a really good point that was brought up, because they hunt with their whiskers. And their whiskers are actually what tells them when a fish has gone through the water. And that's how they track down their prey, is actually with their whiskers. So that was a really, really great point. And this is a picture of a couple different harbor seals in the Pacific Northwest. So they do come in two different colors. Harbor seals come in a dark morph and a light morph. And so you can see here there's white-looking harbor seals and then black-looking harbor seals. So they come in a variety of colors, and then they also kind of in between. So it might be confusing when you see these guys, but it's all the same species. All right, now we've got a couple other species that are sea lion species that live in the Pacific Northwest. One has an entanglement, but this is a really tough question. These are two different species. Does anyone know what either of these species is? They're sea lions, but what kind of sea lions are they? Yeah, yep. Yep, well, there's not quite a harbor seal, but what sea lions do we have here? Brown, they're brown. Any ideas? We've got, and let's see, I'll give you a clue. They're from further south, and they start with a C, and there's a state with the same name. What's south of us? Yeah? Columbia, there is a river, but what state is south of us? You should say it. California sea lion. Look at another winner. All right. Good job. Here you go, sweetie. This is your California sea lion. So, yeah, thank you. Good job. We've got a very marine-focused group up here. So, yeah, that's a California sea lion. So they live here. And then there's also stellar sea lions that live here. And those are really huge, huge sea lions. They can actually weigh more than 2,000 pounds. So those are very, very big. And then last but not least, we have to give credit to our little sea otters. So sea otters are adorable, and they live on the coast of Washington. And right now we have about 1,500 or 1,500 sea otters on our coast. And then we have another critter called a river otter that lives more in the Salish Sea or the Puget Sound. Does anyone know how to tell the difference between a sea otter and a river otter? Let's say you see, okay, you're the expert. What do you know? It's very focused on the whiskers, and that is true. The whiskers of the river otter are more prominent than the whiskers of the sea otter. That is a really good point. Now, if you see an animal that's swimming in the water, kind of doggy paddling, and he's got his belly down, and he's kind of swimming like that, what do you think that is? Who's doggy paddling? River otter or sea otter? It's a river otter. So sea otters swim on their back because they have to crack their food open. So their table is like their stomach. And so they're on their back like this. So you see what this sea otter is doing? He's swimming on his back. And he's got a sea star in his little hands. Yeah, sorry, sea otter. Yep. And he has no whiskers. Do you see that? But they do have little whiskers. But the stuffed animal has no whiskers. Yeah, so we'll use that as an important difference between the two. So in summary, SR3 is a new group. We've been around for almost a year now. We are creating Washington's first dedicated marine wildlife hospital. We're also researching the health of the killer whales here in the region. And we are working with our collaborators, the University of Washington and the Northwest Indian College, as education is a really important part of everything we do. And we're also disentangling whales. We've got our disentanglement expert here, Doug, and we're disentangling sea lions as well. So we're busy, hard at work. We also love stuffed animals. These are very important for education. And I will take any questions you guys may have. And there's more stuffed animals to be given away, so you may want to come up and I'll ask you questions if you want, and you'll get a free stuffed animal. So any questions? You do? We've got a question from behind, very tricky.
Are any of the seals or sea lions
Yeah, so are any of the seals or sea lions endangered in their population? So that's a really, really good question. So let's start with harbor seals, shall we? They are so important. So harbor seals, as I mentioned, were hunted almost to extinction in this area for their pelts. And they were down to about 2,000 animals. And the last time that we have actually counted the number of harbor seals officially in the Salish Sea was in 1999. And at that time, they counted 7,000 animals. We think the animals might be up to around 10 to 15,000, but we don't know for sure. So it's surprising, but we actually don't know very well what the harbor seal population is doing. So, some people say, oh, they're overpopulated and stuff, but that's not true. They're likely not overpopulating because we killed so many of them. But they definitely, because they eat a variety of foods, they're doing better than, let's say, the killer whales, because the killer whales only eat one type of food. You guys remember what the resident killer whales eat? You win everything. We'll give them a chance. Just give them a chance. Yeah, what do the killer whales eat? Fish. There you go. All right, another killer whale. Woo! Good job. And does anyone remember how many killer whales are left here in the Puget Sound? 78. Close. 78, but close. I hope it doesn't go down to 76. Ugh. So it's the same number actually as when they were listed in 2004, I want to say. So they went up just a little and then they came right back down. So last year, 6 killer whales from our southern resident population died. Yeah, so even though they've been having babies, they haven't been surviving. So yeah, what's your question? Oh my gosh, this is such a good question. Do sea otters eat a lot of things or do they just eat a certain thing? So that's a really, really good question because most sea otters just eat one food type. And I know your mom always tells you you've got to eat a variety of food, right? But some sea otter moms train their babies to only eat one thing. And in particular, sometimes they train their babies to just eat purple urchins. And do you know what happens to sea otters that just eat purple urchins? They turn purple. Their teeth turn purple and their bones turn purple. Isn't that cool? Yeah, so, but they also eat different types of fish. Sometimes they eat crabs. This little guy is eating a sea star. So they eat a variety of foods. Some do, but some just specialize on one food source. So that's a really good question. Yeah, what's your question? This is amazing. I don't know how many of the adults here know this, but we were just told by a 7-year-old that if sea otters don't eat urchins, then the kelp forests go away. Did you guys know that? That's actually very true because urchins eat kelp. So sea otters are really important for keeping the kelp forests around because they keep the kelp forest predator in check. So that is a really, really important point. So important that I think you deserve a sea otter. So way to go. Amazing. All right. Well, I think we may have one more. We have 2. Dun, dun, dun. 2 more. All right. Any other questions from the audience? You in the shirt. How do the bones turn purple? So they actually absorb the purple pigment from the urchins into their body when they eat the urchin, and then it actually goes into their bones, and it turns their bones purple. Isn't that crazy? And they have purple teeth. It'd be embarrassing to have purple teeth, though, don't you think? Yeah, for sure. You have a question? Are the river otters the ones that hang on to seaweed when they sleep? So the animals that wrap themselves up into kelp when they sleep are actually sea otters. So they wrap themselves in the kelp so that they don't drift away during storms. Yeah, and especially if they have babies, sometimes they try to hide in the kelp. Yeah, totally. Exactly. Yep. Yep. True. Yeah. Yes. So this little one just shared with us that when the sea otters have a baby, the baby is more vulnerable because it's on their tummy. So that's very true. And so they have to use the kelp to hide. So you had another question?
How big can the sea otter get to?
That's a great question. How big can sea otters get? Can any of the adults here in the audience answer that sea otter question, or children? Yes? How big can a sea otter get? Do you know? 100 pounds. That's actually right. Oh my goodness. Okay. I don't know. Did someone plant these little marine biology geniuses up front? This is amazing. This is great. So sea otters in Washington can be anywhere from 60 to 120 pounds. Isn't that huge? I mean, that's a big, big weasel, right? And these guys are from the weasel family. All right, we have one more stuffed animal. It looks like we have a strong bidder for that animal. Go ahead. How tall can the sea otters get up to? Do you have any guesses? Like as big as your brother, maybe? Yeah, exactly, as big as your brother. So I think we have our last harbor seal right there because you guys needed to even out anyway. So any other questions before I make sure one adult in the audience remembers the difference between a seal and a sea lion? Do we have any adults who remember the difference between a seal and a sea lion? You're a kiddo. We can't use you. I don't think the adults are listening in the back. I don't think we got anyone. James, can you tell us the difference between a seal and a sea lion?
Yeah. Sea lions can walk their hind flippers underneath and walk on all fours.
Yep.
Seals kind of scoot along.
There we go. So sea lions can actually flip their hind flippers underneath them and walk. And then seals scoot along. They're just big, kind of fat caterpillars. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right, guys. Any other questions before I head out? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The question is my background and how did I get into this? So I grew up on a farm in the middle of Minnesota. Never thought I'd be in Washington working on marine wildlife, but I knew I wanted to be a veterinarian and I knew I wanted to work on wildlife. And then after veterinary school, I worked at Lincoln Park Zoo on rabies eradication in the Serengeti. And then from there, I came here and I worked as the head veterinarian at the Seattle Aquarium, where I think many of you have learned your stats. And I was there for 6 years, and then I just started a nonprofit to create Washington's first marine wildlife rehabilitation and science center, because we are actually the only region in North America that lacks such a facility. And so I, felt that was important to go out and make that difference. And we've got some great seal sitters over here that can tell you how many seals they see, and many of which need some help to get through rehabilitation. And right now they can go to Paws, has a couple spots, and then Wolf Hollow came back online this year. But marine animal rehabilitation is very expensive. And so we're trying to funnel resources to put down the first saltwater pools in the state, and then really to create a center that's dedicated to that, because it's expensive, it's a lot of hard work, and having a center that just does that is important. So great question. Any other questions, guys? Yeah. Maybe you should teach this, though, actually. I feel like you should be up here, but... What do river otters eat, and why do they stay with their belly down? River otters eat a lot of different stuff. They like to eat fish, a variety of small fish like herring, but they'll eat clams. They'll eat a variety of different things. They'll eat, even if they find baby ducks, they'll eat them. Sorry, guys. But they eat a variety of different things, and they're not actually a marine mammal. They live in saltwater. Sometimes they can live in freshwater too. And they're in the Puget Sound, but they're not really out on the coast a ton. They are a little bit, but not mostly. They're in the Sound. So that's a really good question. And they swim like this just because they don't stay in the water, so they can go on land to go eat. Yeah. So unlike the sea otters that have to stay in the ocean all the time, so they have to make their own table out of their belly. Yeah. Any other great questions from this incredibly smart crowd up here? Yeah, another one. Yeah, why do they eat just fish? Is that your question? Yeah. So the question is, why do harbor seals eat just fish? You know, they eat a whole bunch of different types of fish, and I don't know why they just eat fish. I think it's what's most available, so that's why they eat fish. But that's a really, really good question. And I think now I'll wrap up, and I'll stay down here and talk to you guys. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. A farmer, huh? I knew we had something in common.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Lizana Lerner, give her a round again. Thank you. Very good, very informative. It's very important to know what is going on in our sacred waters around us. Yes, a lot of these marine mammals and marine wildlife, they eat fish. Who else eats fish? People eat fish. And to some places in some parts of the world, and in fact sometimes around us in pretty much all over the world, we eat too much fish. We're eating so much fish because there's so many of us now that we're running out of fish for our marine wildlife. So in a little bit, we're going to be talking about how to raise your own fish in your own backyard. Not only do you get to raise your own fish, but the water that the fish live in becomes a fertilized water for your garden where you raise your own food. And it becomes a situation where you have what's called a closed loop. You harvest your water from the rainfall, you put it in your pools, your fish live off the water. When they're done with the water and you got new water, you need to empty those tanks. That goes to your garden, that goes to your food, and grows great food. It's a really good way to grow food, as that fish fertilized water is. And then you will be able to eat the food. So it's what we call a closed loop. So that'll come up in a little bit. I'll let you know when we're about to do that. And wow, what a bunch of smart kids. What school? Green Lake. Green Lake Elementary, is that right? That's a public school. I don't believe it. Okay, you guys, we'll be back in a little bit. A little more music for you. Thank you. Stick around. Tell your friends to come on over. We've got a lot of things to present today about sacred waters.
Oh, you want the tortilla chips?